I was just supposed to drop off a KF quarter and leave. But then she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "If you're brave, enough stay." I had no idea that just minutes later something in me would shift completely because of one woman one night, and one question I'll never forget. What happened next still haunts me. If you've ever met someone who changed your life in a moment and disappeared, before you could even understand why this story is for you, tap like to support true emotional storytelling, and hit subscribe if you believe that sometimes all it takes is one quiet invitation to change everything. My name is Noah. I'm 22. And this summer I've been doing something I never thought I would, delivering KF quarters around Asheville, North Carolina. It's part of a summer internship program through my college. More of a side gig than a career step, but it pays. And honestly, it keeps my head quiet. Asheville is calm. That's the word that comes to mind most. It's nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, full of old bookstores, friendly coffee shops, quirky artists and soft jazz leaking out of vinyl stores. The kind of town where nothing really happens, but somehow that's comforting. It rains here a lot, not the kind of dramatic thunderstorm that scares you. Just a gentle, persistent drizzle that makes everything smell like wet pine and pavement. Some days, I'll walk past the library on Montfort Avenue and wonder what it would feel like to actually belong in a place like this. Other days, I just drive and deliver buckets of chicken to hungry locals. I live in a tiny studio apartment over an old shoe repair shop. The ceiling cacks, the paint is chipped. My roommate's gone most of the time. So I've got a lot of time to myself and way too much space in my own head. The truth is I don't know what I'm doing with my life. My major doesn't excite me. My friends feel distant. I'm good at pretending things are fine. But inside, it's like I'm always floating just a few inches above ground, waiting for gravity to kick in. And then one ordinary Thursday evening, I knocked on a door and everything changed. It was a Thursday evening, the kind that makes everything feel a little bit unreal. The sun had already dipped below the hills, and Asheville was wrapped in that soft golden hour glow that made even the broken sidewalks look poetic. I had one last order before I could clock out a KFC family combo extra biscuits. The address was somewhere in Montfort Hills, a quiet upscale part of town I rarely delivered to Winding Street's Victorian. Homes, soft porch lights, wine chimes that whispered, instead of clanged. I followed the GPS past rows of tall oaks and parked in front of a house that looked like it had been plucked out of a Southern Living magazine. It wasn't flashy, just timeless white. Shutters, ivy creeping up the sides, a wide front porch with a rocking chair that looked like it had 1,000 stories to tell. I grabbed the bag, walked up the path, and knocked twice. When the door opened, I nearly forgot why I was. There she stood there, Vivian, mid to late 40s. Maybe auburn hair falling in gentle waves past her shoulders. She wore a forest green cardigan, simple earrings, and no makeup that I could see. But something about her felt composed. Like the air around her paused before moving again. Her eyes met mine, calm, curious, unbothered by my obvious awkwardness. I managed to croak out your order. She took the bag from my hands, and for a split second our fingers touched. That's when she said it soft, almost amused. "If you're brave enough, stay." I blinked. Did I hear that right? She didn't laugh, didn't wink, just looked at me like she already knew what I'd do. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I felt my face heat up, heart pounding like I'd just sprinted uphill. I looked at her, then at the porch steps, then back at her again. I should probably finish my shift," I stammered. She gave a small nod like it didn't surprise her one bit. "Suit yourself," she said, still smiling that knowing smile. The door closed quietly. I stood there for a moment longer, hands still awkwardly hovering by my side brain, doing somersaults. And then I walked back to my car fast like I needed distance. But even as I drove away, All I could hear in my head was her voice. If you're brave enough, stay. That night, I barely slept. And when I did, she was there in my mind, in that porch, light in the quiet. It had been a week since the delivery, a week of replaying her word, on a loop. If you're brave enough, stay. I kept telling myself it was just a strange, flirtatious moment, something meant to be forgotten. But the truth, I couldn't forget her. That afternoon, the sun finally broke through the gray skies that had blanketed Asheville for days. The air was crisp, the sidewalks warm. I decided to take a walk through Weaver Park, my favorite quiet spot. Near campus, I had music playing through my earbuds, my mind drifting when someone caught my eye. I froze. There she was, Vivian. She was walking slowly along a gravel path, her hands tucked into the pockets of a long-olive cold coat. The late sunlight lit her hair like it was spun copper. She looked exactly how I remembered, composed, graceful, almost out of place in this world. I panicked, looked away, pretended to fiddle with my phone, but it was too late. She'd seen me. She smiled, not the mysterious half-smile from the porch. This one was warmer, familiar. She approached, unhurried, and stopped in front of me. "You look familiar," she said, eyes sparkling. I swallowed hard. I delivered your KFC a week ago." Her smile widened. "That's right, the delivery boy who ran away." I laughed awkwardly. "I wasn't." "Surafe, you were serious." "I was." Then after a beat, she added, "Are you busy right now?" I shook my head. "Then walk with me." It wasn't a request. It was soft, but it was a challenge. We started down the path, falling into rhythm. Just about school, I told her about the internship, my confusion about the future. She listened without interrupting. She shared her story. A former literature teacher, recently divorced, no children. She'd moved to Asheville 2 years ago to start over. Loved poetry. Listened to vinyl, jazz records on rainy mornings. I told her I'd never met anyone like her. She didn't blush. She just said, "You probably haven't." As we reached the edge of the park, the light beginning to fade, she stopped, reached into her purse, pulled out a small notepad, scribbled a number, tore it off. She handed it to me. "I don't usually do this," she said, "but something tells me you're worth the risk." Then with that same calm grace, she turned and walked away, and I stood there, heart-pounding, number in hand, wondering what the hell just happened. The piece of paper sat on my nightstand for 3 days. Every night I'd pick it up, stare at the number, then put it back down like it might burn me. I rehearsed what I'd say, then lost the nerve before I could even deal. What was I afraid of? That she wouldn't answer? Or worse, that she would, finally, on a rainy Tuesday night, ESOT. In my dimly lit apartment, phone in hand, hard hammering, I took a breath, tapped the number, and hit call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then hello. Her voice warm, steady. The kind of voice that makes you exhale, without realizing you've been holding your breath. "Hey, it's Noah," I said, stumbling slightly from the park and the KFC. A soft laugh on the other end. "I was starting to think you lost my number." "I almost did. I'm glad you didn't." We talked for a few minutes. Then she asked, "How about dinner this Friday?" We chose a small Italian place just off Pack Square, dim, lighting brick wall, checkered tablecloths. I showed up early, palms sweating, second-guessing everything I was wearing. When she walked in, I nearly forgot how to speak. She wore a simple black dress, her hair down in soft waves. She smiled when she saw me, and something in my chest loosened. "You clean up nicely?" she teased as she sat down. "You look incredible," I blurted. We laughed, and the conversation flowed as easily as the wine books we loved, albums we wore out, dreams that never came true, regrets, moments we didn't realize were important until they were. Gone, Vivian told me about a poem that saved her life. Once I told her about a short story I wrote in high school that no one ever read. Time blurred plates, cleared their restaurant, emptied around us. Outside, the streets were damp from earlier rain. Wes stood by the curb, not ready to say goodbye. She looked at me, that same calm, searching gaze. "Would you like to come back to my place?" She paused. "Just to talk, or not only if you feel ready." She wasn't trying to seduce me. There was no pressure, just an open door, a question. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid of the answer. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building, just outside downtown Asheville. No elevator, just a creaky staircase, and the faint scent of lavender in the halls. Vivian unlocked the door with a quiet click and stepped aside. "Come in," she said softly. It was nothing like I expected, and yet exactly how I imagined she would live. The space was warm, lived in, full of character. Worn hardwood floors, shelves overflowing with books, their spines turned every which way, lamps with golden light instead of overhead bulbs, a few. Framed black and white photos. A record player sat in the corner, slowly spinning a Billie Holiday album that filled the room with smoky jazz. There was a kind of peaceful chaos to the place. Every corner told a story. "Make yourself comfortable," she said, slipping off her shoes and heading into the kitchen. I stood awkwardly for a second, taking it all in the flicker of candlelight. On the windowsill, the faint scent of chamomile and old paper. She returned a few minutes later. 2 mugs of tea, in hand chamomile. "It helps with nerves," I smiled. "You think I'm nervous? I know you are." We sat on a deep velvet couch, side by side, legs almost but not quite touching. The tea warmed my hands. The jazz wrapped around us like a blanket. For a while we just talked. She told me about her mother, how she'd suddenly 2 years ago, how Viv never really recovered, how she once started writing a novel but abandoned it halfway through. I used to think words were everything she said, but after a while even they stopped showing up. It told her about how invisible I felt, most days, how it always seemed like I was watching life through glass close enough to see it, but never really in it. How I'd been going through the motions hoping someone might notice. She listened fully, the kind of listening that makes you forget to filter your pain. At some point, our conversation slowed. She leaned in, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I felt her hand gently rest on mine, and then softly, naturally we kissed. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hungry. It was slow, deep, like something being stitched back together inside. Both of us. Her touch was careful, intentional, not asking for anything, just giving later as we sat wrapped in the quiet. She looked at me not with desire, but with something more human, more honest. "You made me feel something I thought I'd lost," she whispered. "Hope." I woke to the soft hum of jazz and the smell of fresh coffee. For a moment, I didn't move. I just laid there wrapped in a warm blanket in the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, but safe. The morning light filtered through linen curtains, painting the room in gold, and soft gray. Vivian was in the kitchen barefoot, hair robe tied loosely at the waist. She moved slowly, deliberately, like someone who had learned to savor small moments. I sat up, ran a hand through my hair, still unsure if the night before had actually happened. But the warmth still lingering in my chest told me it did. She glanced over her shoulder and smiled. "Good morning." "Morning," I said, my voice rough from sleep. She handed me a steaming mug, and we stood there for a while, sipping in silence. There was no rush, no awkwardness, just a kind of unspoken understanding between us. I wanted to ask her what this meant, what came next, but I didn't. Somehow I knew the moment didn't need labels. When it was time to leave, I slipped my jacket on, slowly, not wanting the quiet to end. Vivian walked me to the door. Her eyes met mine. "Call me Noah," she said gently. I nodded, heart swelling with something unfamiliar but welcome. I will, and I mayn't it. I waited a day before texting her. Just something simple. I had a really great time. Hope you're doing okay. No reply. I told myself. Maybe she was busy. Maybe she needed space. 2 days passed. Then, 4. I sent another message. Thinking of you. No pressure. Just wanted to say hi. Still nothing. I called straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. The next day I tried again. Same thing. Same silence. By the end of the week, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my chest. The kind of feeling you don't want to name because naming it makes it real. So on Saturday afternoon, I went back to her building. It was cloudy. The kind of gray sky that feels like a warning. I climbed the stairs, each one heavier than the last. When I reached the 3rd floor, I stood in front of her door. Heart pounding, I knocked. No answer. I knocked. Again a little louder. Still nothing. I pressed my ear against the door. The apartment sounded hollow, like it had been empty for days. I stood there, for a minute not knowing what to do before walking down to the front office. An older man with a clipboard and a tired expression looked up as I stepped inside. Can I help you? Yeah, I'm looking for someone. Vivian. 3rd floor corner unit. He flipped through, a few papers squinting. Oh, Miss Bennett. She moved out. I blinked. What about a week ago paid through the end of the month? No forwarding address. Are you sure, kid? I'm the one who locked the door behind her. She's gone. I walked back outside down the sidewalk, out into the street. Then I just stopped. Across the street I could see her window once lit with warm lamplight and soft jazz. Now dark, curtainless still. She was gone just like that. No goodbye, no message, not even a trace. And something in me felt like it had been quietly erased. The days that followed felt like walking underwater. Everything moved slower. Sound was muted. Even my own thoughts echoed like they didn't belong to me. I kept reaching for my phone, expecting her name to flash across the screen. A message, a call, anything. But it stayed silent. And so did I. I stopped telling my friends about her. I stopped walking by the building. I avoided the park. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. I wasn't angry, just confused, wounded in a quiet way, like something beautiful had happened. And I was the only one left to remember it. One night I opened my journal for the first time in months, not to write poetry or letters I'd never send, just to remember. Every detail I could recall: the sound of her laugh, the way she stirred her tea, the Billie Holiday song playing in the background. I wrote it all down. Not to let go, but to hold on. Because holding on for me was the only way to make sense of what she left behind. And she did leave something behind. A week after she disappeared, I found it tucked inside my jacket pocket, the one I wore that night. A small folded note card, cream, colored unmarked on the outside. Inside was a quote, handwritten in delicate script. Some people come into your life to remind you what your heart still knows how to feel. No signature, no explanation. Just that I stared at it for a long time. And then I slid it into the back of my journal, like pressing a flower between the pages. Something fragile. Something worth keeping. Vivian didn't belong to me. Maybe. She was never meant to stay. But in the short time, I knew her, just days. Really, she taught me more than most people have in years. Not through advice, not through long speeches or grand declarations. She taught me by being exactly who she was, and by leaving exactly when she did. Because the truth is, some people don't come into your life to stay. They come to wake you up. Vivian reminded me that connection isn't always about permanence. It's about impact. Some bonds don't need to last a lifetime to change you forever. Sometimes all it takes is one quiet moment, a cup of tea, a song on vinyl, A sentence whispered at the door. If you're brave enough, stay. I used to think being brave meant holding on, fighting to keep something no matter the cost. But Vivian showed me something else. That sometimes courage means letting go. Letting go of expectations, of needing answers, of wishing someone would come back. She didn't disappear to hurt me. I don't believe that. Maybe she needed to move on. Maybe she was afraid. Or maybe she was exactly who she said she was. Someone starting over moment by moment. And for that moment, she chose me. And I got to choose her back, even if only for one night, one sunrise. One soft goodbye that never got. Said I still think of her sometimes when I hear jazz, or see a green scarf, or pass by a bookstore with the windows fogged. I wonder if she ever thinks of me, but I don't need to. No, because what matters is this: I remember her, not as someone who left Buddhas, someone who showed me that love, no matter how brief, can still be real. And sometimes that's enough. Have you ever met someone who changed your entire inner world in just a moment? Not someone who stayed forever, not someone you planned for, but someone whose presence cracked. Something open made you feel again, trust again, hope again. Maybe it was a stranger. Maybe it was someone you loved but couldn't keep. Maybe like Vivian, they arrived when you weren't ready and left before you knew what they really meant to. I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. You never know who else might need to hear it tonight. And if this story touched something in you, tap like to help others. Find it and subscribe for more stories that remind us sometimes a great story isn't just meant to be heard. It's meant to be carried with you quietly, carefully, maybe even forever.